Are you an Automatic 1111 user who freaked out the first time you saw the ComfyUI interface? Me too. And I've been avoiding it for a pretty long time now, and I knew that one day it was inevitable that I would get it on my machine, and that day has come. And it just took the right thing. I've been watching all sorts of incredible videos being produced by ComfyUI in a lot easier fashion than you can do in Automatic 1111, if you can even do it in Automatic 1111. And that's the part that's been frustrating me. So what threw me over the edge? Well, the recent release of Stability.ai's video models is what pushed me. Because if you wanted to try Stability.ai's new video models, allegedly you had to get yourself on some sort of waiting list. Waiting list. No. You don't have to put your name on a waiting list because Stable Diffusion's video is available to you right now if you're just willing to get over yourself and install ComfyUI. So let's do it. I promise you it's not as bad as you think. I was with you. So if you've seen any of my other videos, you may know that I love the Pinocchio installer. It's really easy for people like me who just don't want to deal with all of the manual installation processes involved with some of these AI things. I'll do it if I have to, but Pinocchio makes it really easy, and they've been making it easier and easier by keeping up with the latest and greatest. In fact, when I went to go install ComfyUI yesterday, they already had it all with exactly what I wanted. What are you talking about, Bob? Let's find out. This is the Pinocchio webpage. It's a free app. All you got to do is click the download button, choose your platform, follow the installation instructions, and then you're good to go. I know you can do this. I believe in you. So once you've installed Pinocchio, you're going to see a screen that's probably empty if you've just installed it. It won't have any of this stuff. It'll probably look something more like this, where you can search for apps that you want to install. With how many clicks? 1. You're just going to click on where it says ComfyUI, and you're going to click on download. And then it's going to ask you, what kind of a name do you want to call this thing? Well, how about just ComfyUI? And then you're going to click on download, which I have already done, so I'm not going to do it again. Once you've downloaded it, you're going to come back to this screen, and it's going to have a little button here that says install. So you're going to click install, and then it's going to download models it needs to be able to run this thing. And then you'll also notice on the screen up here, it says download Stable Video XT model, download Stable Video model, download LCM LoRa. Do all those things. You'll be glad you did. These are the two video models. The XT model renders more frames than the regular model, but go ahead and get both of them. Then once you go through this process and finally get it installed, it will allow you to launch it. When you do, all this little screen's going to pop up here, and one of the wonderful things about ComfyUI is it doesn't use a lot of system resources unnecessarily, so it's very streamlined. My Automatic 1111 takes close to 5 minutes to launch. Once this loads, you're going to click Open Web UI, and it's going to open up a browser window. Now what you're seeing here is the last workflow I worked on, so this isn't exactly what you'll see. You'll see something more like this that you're going to see when I click Load Default. One of the great things about this particular installation coming from the Pinocchio server is that it comes with all these video things you already need, including a workflow to be able to use the Stable Diffusion video very easily, which we're going to look at, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use. And it also comes with the ComfyUI Manager already installed, and you access that at the bottom of this little window here. You click on Manager, and this is where you're going to keep up with all of the custom nodes and keeping them updated and all of that. Now, you don't have to know what nodes go into any particular workflow because it will tell you when they're missing. And if they are missing, you simply click Install Missing Custom Node. Right now, I'm not missing any, so there's nothing there. But if there were, you would just click the Install button that appears, and it updates it, and you go through that for all of the nodes you might be missing. The first time I ran this, it said you're missing some nodes, and I updated them all, and then it still didn't work. I launched ComfyUI again, and it said, oh, you're missing some nodes, and it updated them that way. So you may have to go through as an iterative process, but it's very simple. You're just going to click until it's done, and you'll know that something's missing because where there is something missing, you'll see red. Somewhere on these windows it'll show red, which means, hey, you're missing a node, or there's some other thing that you need to have to make this thing work. So when you click Load Default, it'll bring in the default workflow, which is very simple. It's using the 1.5 Stable Diffusion model. It's got a positive prompt and a place for a negative prompt, and this is where you set your dimensions for your image, and then this is the sampler that you will use. If you're familiar with Automatic 1111, you've seen things like Euler, Euler A, and so on, this list here. So you can just choose what you're familiar with or just leave it there, and then it runs it through a VAE, and then it was going to save the image. Again, you don't have to do anything at this point once you've got all the nodes installed that you need, except to put in a prompt, and it even comes with one here. And so to make it happen, you just click Q Prompt, and you can check the progress of it by looking at which of these nodes is outlined. So that was in real time. You can see that was pretty quick. And there's our 512 by 512 image that was based on the prompt here. Okay, so you can play with that all day. You can play with different models. I think now's a good time to stress that this is not a ComfyUI tutorial. It's just such a broad thing, and I'm just getting started with it, honestly. I'm going to show you how to load the workflow in question, how to make the changes so that you can create a video like that, and then how to play with other workflows so that you can learn just like I am by creating content and watching how it's going through the system. When you install ComfyUI, there will be a folder within the ComfyUI folder called Workflows. And here they've given you a lot of examples that you can just literally drag and drop onto this screen and it'll load up everything for you. For example, they have some example video workflows. Workflow text to image to video, which just as it sounds, you'll create an image and then it will use the process that we are here to learn to create a video out of it. So let's just click this and drag it right onto this screen. And look at that, everything updates. Now again, if you're missing any part of what makes this happen, you'll see that there's red there. You'll click on the manager, you'll click on install missing custom nodes, and you'll go through that process. Everything stays right inside ComfyUI, which is a great advantage over Automatic 11.11. So here's where we're going to put in our positive prompt, any negative prompt, how we define the dimensions of this. This model was trained on the dimensions of 1024 by 576. So for the optimal results, you'd want to create an image that has those dimensions. We're going to go ahead and go with that default. So this section here is all about just creating the initial image, which then goes into this section here, which turns that image, that still image, into a video. I'm going to show you another workflow that is a little more advanced and gives you more options here. So this is set to save your video out in the WebP format. Well, what if you don't want to do that? Well, there's other nodes that you can install that can give you more options. But for now, here is the prompt that it gives you. We're just going to go ahead and go with it. Photograph beautiful scenery, nature, mountains, Alps, river, rapids, snow. All right. So we're going to, as with everything, start this process by clicking Q prompt. And it says what? Oh, so it says that the value is not listed. This is the default value it came with. It's pointing to somewhere that doesn't exist on my drive. So I simply have to choose this model from the list that is on my drive, and then we'll be good to go. So in this case, mine is called SDXL base, and now it will turn green when I Q prompt. So now we can see that what it's doing, the process that it's on now, is loading the checkpoint. We know that because the rectangle is green. And now it zips through that part, and now it's creating the image. And now there's the image there. Okay, so now the image has gone through this process. This model now is loading, which is going to convert this image into a video. And now that's what's happening here. You can see it is in the process of going through what we have defined as 20 steps to process this. You want to keep your CFG down between like 1.5 and 3. You can play with the samplers, you can play with the schedule, and it will all have an impact on the final result. Here are the parameters for the animation itself. The motion bucket ID determines like how much movement is going on. Now I found that a value of 127, which is their default, that's a lot of movement. And then from what I'm understanding about the augmentation level is it affects what kind of movement's going on maybe in the background of the image. Now right now it's set for 0 and a motion bucket of 127. We're almost through here, which means that our result is going to show up here. Now we can also determine how many frames per second is this video. And now it may be too late for this generation, but I can change this value by either double clicking here and typing it in. I can click the arrow here and increment it that way, or I can just click in somewhere in here, hold it, and then drag back and forth. So in this case, I probably click here so I could do something like maybe 12 frames per second. The quality, I like a higher quality. All right, there's our output. So what this did is it sort of zoomed in. You can kind of see that there's some animation in the water, not a lot of movement here in the background. So maybe that's because of the 0. Why don't we just change some of these parameters and see what kind of impact it has? So for example, over here, we're going to change this down to maybe 75, maybe a little less movement, but we're going to do the augmentation level to maybe, I don't know, 0.25. Let's try that. And then we will just click Q prompt again, and it will go through the process again. So now it's created the image, which is slightly different because we did not like keep the same seed or anything, but we could have if we had wanted to. Again, this little node here is not the one I would recommend, but this is what was available with the demo, so we're using it because it absolutely does work and it gives you an opportunity to play with this stuff. There we go. So now in this case, it sort of panned up. Again, the water's going. So this is really cool and it absolutely works, but I want to show you the workflow that I found that I'm using that I like even better and why I like it better. So there's lots of places online you can find this workflow. I'm going to point you over to Olivio Sarikas. If I'm saying that wrong, Olivio, sorry. Because it was his video, and particularly this snippet, that got me off of my automatic 1111. But
if you don't want to run ComfyUI at all because you're a bit of a bonehead.
So he has been kind enough to provide a workflow JSON file that you can just download and drag onto the desktop, and it'll provide everything you need for you. But since he did all the work, I'm going to make you go to his page, subscribe, because if you really want to know a lot of stuff about AI, this is one of my favorite guys to follow. And you just scroll down and you'll see where he says download workflow, and you'll click that file. So when you click that, you're going to come here and you're going to see this and go, I don't know what this is, Bob. But you don't have to worry about it if you don't know what this is. It's a JSON file, by the way. It's just a text file. Don't panic. But all you got to do is click this little download arrow, save it to your system, which I've done right here. And now I just simply click and drag this onto the ComfyUI desktop. And there's everything we need. Again, if it's red, go to the manager, click install missing custom nodes, install the missing custom nodes, restart the UI, and you should be good to go. So what's different about this one? A couple of things. One is called FreeU. It's a node that's supposed to make things better. I haven't learned enough about it to talk intelligently, but if you noticed that it was there and I didn't mention it, I didn't want you to, you know what I'm saying? I just wanted to say, yeah, there's that thing there. The other thing is the Rife VFI. It will add frames between frames to kind of smooth things out. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. Now, the first thing we got to do is choose the correct model for this process, which is the video model that we downloaded before. So this is the one it came loaded with, but this particular name of this model isn't on my system. So again, I have to find the one that is. In this case, it's the SVDXT safe tensors file. And now all we got to do to make this work is drag an image right here. And then the rest of it is set up. Now we'll go through it just real quick and I'll show you. You'll recognize some of these settings from before. We got the number of video frames. We have the width and the height, which we're going to change here in just a second, just to show you that you can. And then the motion bucket ID, again, we talked about that's how much motion is going to happen in there. Frames per second we'll leave alone. Augmentation level, we'll leave all of this as it sits right here. Leave all of this here. One thing we will do is we'll bring this CFG down a little bit to like maybe 2. This is just from my own experience. We're going to change the sampler name to Euler Ancestral. And we'll leave the rest of this the same. We won't mess with this right now. And this node here replaces the one we used before that output to the WebP format. We have choices of different formats. I like MP4. I'm going to leave all of that there. All we need now is to drop an image here or choose one. And it doesn't have to be created within ComfyUI. It can be any image in the planet. So let me just find something that might look interesting if we add a little motion to it. Okay, so I chose this little guy here. It's just a character. There's no prompts associated with this, so I'm not going to say like make him dance, make him eat, do any of that. The AI looks at this picture and says, okay, I got some ideas on how we can move it. These settings here will determine how much movement there is. Let's just go ahead and click on Q prompt. It's already sampling here. We're at the sampling stage, and this one is set for 12 steps, not 20. And then now that it's done with the sampling, it runs it through the VAE. It's going to interpolate it, which only takes a second, and now we've got this. Now, this gets fuzzy here. It's kind of fast movement. Let's turn off the interpolation. By doing, all we have to do is right-click and click on bypass, and we're going to click Q prompt again, and watch how fast this happens. It just skips that. It has all the information already. It's instantly there. So now it's a little less blurry. Now, if we want to slow this down, we're going to have to change the frame rate. So let's see if we change the frame rate up here to, let's say, 16 and see what happens when we click Q prompt. Okay, it did slow it down just a little bit. I could slow it down maybe even a little more. Click Q prompt. So it is slowing it down. It doesn't sharpen the image magically. And all it's doing is changing the frame rate. But you'll notice again, it didn't have to re-render anything, this is great. So I can bring that up to whatever frame rate I want. Now I've turned off the interpolation. Now let's go over here though and maybe take this motion bucket down to maybe 56 instead of 100. There's not really a background here to mess with, so we're just going to leave that setting there and click Q prompt. Now it will have to resample again because now we're starting all over. So we're going to be waiting now for the 12 steps to complete. But meanwhile, we can look at this and see that it is a nice high-resolution image. I think we did keep it at 1024 by 576. And I want you to notice also that this image is square. So it actually cropped the image so you see his feet are cut off. So when this is done, we'll change the dimensions of this to a square just to show you what happens. And there we go. So it's a little bit different. A little spastic with the hand. Definitely got him talking. Still a little blurry around the eyes. These are all kinds of things we can play with. I'll tell you what, let's choose another square image, something of a similar vein, and this time we'll change the dimensions to see what happens. All right, now this image has a background and it is square, so we're going to take this and we're just going to go ahead and change it. We're going to go midway in between. I'm going to say 640 by 640. The augmentation level, I'm going to leave it here, but just to see what it does at this default level of 0.02. It doesn't seem like a very high number, but it does do something. I'll leave all of this the same. We'll keep it at 12 steps. We'll keep the config at 2.1, and we don't need 30 frames a second. Let's make it like 15 frames per second and click Q. Okay, so we've got the image, it's square. We're not seeing a lot of motion going on in the background at all, so we're going to play with the augmentation level and just see what happens. What I'm noticing here is that as the animation goes on, it seems to like over-bake a little, and that's generally an issue if you're just dealing with regular Stable Diffusion and creating images. It's an issue of the CFG being up a little high. So I'm actually going to lower this to 1.8, and then I'm going to take this augmentation level and I'm going to move it up to maybe like 61, and the motion bucket, let's just take it back up to 89. All right, so again, this is just a lot of playing around and see what happens. I've never played with the frame rate. Maybe I should play with that because maybe that would make this a little less blurry. But let's go ahead and cue this one up and see what's going on. But I sure love being able to zoom around the interface. It's so easy to move around the interface just by clicking and dragging and zooming in with the wheel. It's very intuitive, and nothing gets pixelated. You really get to see the detail. It's super nice. Okay, so see with the augmentation level up, we got more movement here in the background. No panning or zooming or anything like that. It really looks like flowers flying around, and he's still kind of doing his thing. Let's see what else we might be able to do to change how this is moving. Let's play with the frames per second a little bit. So if it's 25 frames and it's 25 frames per second, that means we're going to get a 1 second animation out of this in theory. So I'm going to take this and move this up to 25 frames too, so everything is talking the same language. And then if we want to double that up with interpolation, we can turn this Rife thing back on. So now let's just see what happens. Now we've got a little bit different kind of movement. We have a little camera spin. He's acting a little bit different. We still got kind of the blurry stuff with his eyes, and there's probably ways to do that. But you can see as we tweak things, and we can play with samplers, we can do all kinds of stuff. We can play with the scheduler here. Let's say we could change this to DPM 2M and then run it and see what happens. Wow, changing the sampler really made a difference. Look at that. It's how things are moving is different, and they're not getting that blur around his eyes. You just got to kind of play with that stuff. Now we've got like God rays in the background, but there's not the flowers. Let's do a different picture completely. All right, here's a picture of a fried egg broken on top of a house that I did in some image generation program. I'm not going to change anything from the settings that we just did. Click Q prompt and go. The CFG scale is down still at 1.8, so we're liking all that. Oh, okay. Well, so now this is different than what I thought. Now we've got this panning around as we get different views of. Let's change the sampler back to the Euler ancestral. The scheduler, we go back to normal. We'll leave everything else the same, I guess. The 25 frames per second, that's pretty cool, actually. I think that made a huge difference, don't you? Let's just for fun, let's turn this back on and let's get the interpolated version of this. It'll only take a second, because the frames are already done. Oh no, it is. Oh, I changed something, didn't I? I changed the sampler. So it's redoing it. So now we have this, and you'll see now, if I bypass this and just Q prompt again, now it's the same image, it's just twice as fast because it doesn't have those interpolated frames. It really makes a big difference by doing the frame rate up high. It takes away that blur. It makes me want to try another one. So let's do it. So this has a lot of creative potential, don't you think? It's a good thing I don't have to put a prompt. All right, so let's see. What do we want to save? We're going to keep the frames per second at 25. We're going to keep that because I like that. We're going to keep the width and the height the same. We're going to keep the augmentation level the same, although it did kind of do a pan. I'd really like the spider or something to move. I'm going to move the motion bucket up. I'm guessing here, but 125 and augmentation level, sure. I don't know. This is my gut's saying 0.46. And Q prompt. Again, this is only 12 steps. If we had done 20 steps or 25 steps, we'd have even more detail in this image, but I think this is pretty good as it is. This one, just from a still image with the house. Okay. Okay, I think that's a little crazy. I think that might be too much in the motion bucket department. I'm going to bring that sucker way down to 65, And what do we got going on in the background here? Not too much. Maybe we can pop this up a little bit. The augmentation level. And look, this augmentation level thing about the background, I got this from one video. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, you can tell me. I really don't mind. All right, let's cue this again. I didn't bother to interpolate that one because it's just so weird. It's like spider reverse going into a wormhole or something like that. Okay, that's a little better. Still kind of blurry here. Let's go ahead and turn on the interpolation. See how long that takes. Not very long. See, it was like, that was seriously, I did no editing there. It just was there. It was just done. But we are still blurring out on these types of things. So it's not perfect, and of course it's probably user error on my part. I'm sure there's things we can do to make that not happen. But for now, let's get it going. Let's do one more just for grins. Here's another random image. It's got a little creature, it's got clouds, it's got all kinds of stuff that it could interpolate for motion. Let's take the motion bucket up to 92, because that's where it landed. Frames per second, we're going to leave right there, because I do like that. Although, it didn't really make so much of a difference here, did it? It's not like that's really, really sharp. So what was it before? It was 6 frames per second. So let's do this. Let's take it down to 12 frames per second. Let's see what this looks like. Okay. Kind of weird. I'm going to try the LCM sampler. Meanwhile, I will change augmentation level back down to 0.2. Take this down to 65. All right, and then just let's see what happens. The LCM model. Wow, okay, so that different sampler did give me a very different sort of result. Makes me want to try another sampler just for fun. We'll do DPM, SSD, and we'll do Keras. I'm just totally guessing here. I'm just playing to see what it'll do. Okay, that's crazy. I like it, right? It's just weird and random, and if I kept doing it, I'd probably get other results. Let's do one that is a definite action shot and see how it interprets something that should be obvious in terms of how things should move. So this is a picture of a jet ski going fast in front of Santa Monica Pier, if you must know. So let's take a look at what will happen if we just leave everything just how it is there. I'll leave that sampler. I like what that sampler is doing with movement, and I'm fine with the frame rate and all that other stuff. Let's go. So check that out. That's pretty cool. All right, now that's got the interpolation going, so let's turn the interpolation off and just kind of see it. We'll see it twice as fast this way. That's nice. Now, I don't have any kind of looping turned on. We can try ping pong at this point and see if it's too late to do a ping pong. Nope, look at that. It will still do it. So even after you've rendered it, even after that's happened, you can go back and say, no, I want it to ping pong. No, and then probably change the format and all the other stuff too. I want to do one more where the action is definitely implied. Obviously, it is a cabin on fire. I'm going to leave everything exactly how it was because I'm liking what's coming out of here. And I will turn off ping pong. And I guess I'll leave everything else the same because why not? So cue prompt. Okay. Well, it certainly knows what to do with a fire. You got some smoke down here. Very nice. So the ability to do that and get to play with Stability Video before anybody else was enough to get me to download ComfyUI. And I promise you that if you are proficient at all with Automatic 1111, it's not going to be that bad to get into ComfyUI because truly the drag and drop nature of these workflows and the fact that the workflows are embedded in the images, and if you see something you like, you can just drag it and drop it, and there it is. And the fact that the manager will plug in all the holes for you in terms of nodes that are missing. It really makes this a great way to go. Now, it's not completely replaced Automatic 1111 for me, and I think it's going to be quite some time before it does because there are some workflows in there that I've got down that I don't immediately know how to do here. But when I learn them, chances are it probably will be better and easier and more flexible in ComfyUI. So I've started down that road, and I'm going to be doing another video here soon that's going to show you the other thing that got me jumping on board because I wanted to try something before anybody else. Now, of course, all of these things that are available in ComfyUI and not available somewhere else will probably be a phone app within hours from now. But for now, if you like to play with things before everybody else, and if you're really kind of a geek about Stable Diffusion and really want to get the best out of it, particularly when it comes, for me, things like animation and things involving motion, I really think ComfyUI is worth your time. And Pinocchio as a way to interface with these applications, highly recommended for those of you who don't want to spend hours trying to figure out all kinds of GitHub stuff. So what do you think of this? I know that there's easier ways probably to get similar things done with services like Runway and others, Pika Labs on Discord, that allows you to do, in essence, the same thing. But there are no limits here, and of course, there's no subscriptions here. And it will only get better. So what do you think of this? Are you going to finally jump on the ComfyUI train? If not, what is it going to take? I'd really like to know, because I'm glad I did, even though I know it's a long road ahead.